Welcome back. In other videos, we've thought about gains from trade, but let's think about those in our supply and demand diagram. We want to think about an idea known as economic surplus. So it's how can we see these gains visually? So to do that, let's start by just setting up a supply and demand diagram, and then we'll tell the story around it. So if we set up a diagram, we've got quantity, we've got price, put in an upward sloping supply curve, downward sloping demand curve, and we'll label in our price. So let's tell a story around this. Think about the last time you bought something fun. So for me, the example I always think of is buying a cordless drill. It was a DeWalt drill that I wanted. I went to Home Depot, picked it up, looked at the price, carried it to the cash register, and paid for the thing. As I finished paying for it, I was walking to the car and I was smiling. I just enjoyed knowing that I had bought the drill. I was happy with my purchase. All right, so what does that look like in our supply and demand diagram? So I paid for the drill, right? I paid a price for it, but I was willing to pay more. That's why I was happy with my purchase, right? There's some difference between the price I paid and what I was willing to pay. That's what made me smile as the buyer. So we can see that in our supply and demand diagram as this triangle. So below the demand curve and above the price. That's our difference in what buyers are willing to pay, represented by the demand curve, and how much they actually pay the price. So this whole triangle, these are the gains from trade that make the buyers smile. So this triangle is what's referred to as consumer surplus. So consumer surplus. At the same time as I'm walking to my car with the drill, I'm smiling, I peek back over my shoulder, and I see that the cashier at Home Depot is smiling as well. Now, in reality, they probably didn't care about me at all. But why would a seller smile after a sale? Well, the seller's smiling because they're thinking, yes, we just sold that drill. We sold it for, whatever, $100. Choose your number. But we would have been willing to sell it for less. Gosh, it's going to be on sale in 2 weeks. Right? So sellers, they're willing to sell at a price less than the price. That's the supply curve, right? It's they're willing to sell. How much are they willing to sell at each price? So for each quantity, this is the price that they require. But they're selling for the price that it actually sells at. So there's a difference between what the buyers pay, what the seller sells it for, and what the seller would be willing to sell it for. So this difference, this lower triangle, the difference between what the seller would be willing to sell for, their willingness to accept, the supply curve, and what they actually sell for, this is what we call producer surplus. So this is producer surplus. Now the gains from trade, the benefits from trade, are the sum of these two, right? So consumer surplus plus producer surplus. So consumer surplus plus producer surplus. Those two added together is what we call economic surplus. And what is economic surplus? It's our gains from trade. Both sides are made better off by trade. Consumers by this triangle above price and below the demand curve. Producers made better off by the triangle above the supply curve but below the price. Hopefully now you're getting a feel for how we can visualize these gains from trade in our model of supply and demand. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.